Hello everyone. Welcome to another workshop with IBC Media 2.0 Continuum. This is Polkadot and IBC's a series of multiple workshops from Polkadot and IBC. IBC 2.0 is the second edition of a massive 5-year agenda. We are enabling the largest blockchain ecosystem initiative in India. As you already know, Polkadot is our headline sponsor, and today we are hosting the IBC Hackathon. In case you haven't registered for the challenge yet, please check out the link in the chat box, which I will be putting shortly, and register yourself. I would also request everyone here to join our IBC Media Discord server. You can find the link in the same in the chat box. Hop onto our growing Discord community, engage with our hackathon mentors, and share ideas with like-minded participants. Make sure you connect with us for any queries or suggestions by engaging on our social media platforms, which link will be in the chat box. Now, before we begin, I have my colleague Deepak here with us today, who will briefly take us through Discord, its features, and the right way of using Discord, which can be a powerful tool for the hackathon you will be taking part in. Deepak, over to you.
Hi, Dhruv. Hi, everyone. Dhruv, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
So great. Very good evening, everyone. And thank you, Radha, for taking out the time to conduct this crucial workshop session on Substrate. Uh, to the participants, I would say I'm extremely excited to have you all again. My name is Deepak. I'm here to help you with a very important tool for your hackathon, and that tool is Discord. I'll just take a few seconds and so as to not take a lot of time from Radha and to continue this workshop. So Discord is going to be very important for you. It is a very unique platform. It is quite different than any other social media platform, especially because it has multiple ways through which communication can be done. For example, you can chat, you can contact voice calls, and you can do video chats as well. You may wonder why Discord is very important and why we are speaking about it right now. The answer is simple. IBC hackathons are very challenging and highly technical in nature, and this competition is going to be rigorous, which means that you will be requiring a lot of help, and that is where Discord comes into the picture. To get help, you will need support from your hackathon mentors, for example, Polkadot, Chingari, and other tracks, Robonomics, IBC. And to do so, you will require to get an account on Discord if you don't have already. You can join the server. The link will be put on the chat here on Zoom. If you don't, furthermore, you'll find the links on all our social media platforms. We will also be emailing you the same. And you can just click on the link and join the Discord server. And there you can connect with the mentors. For example, if you are on the Polkadot track, you can go to the Polkadot track category in the Discord and then just raise the queries that you have with respect to your hackathon, or whenever you are stuck. The mentors are there, readily available to help you whenever you are facing any problem. IBC team is there 24/7 to make sure that your journey is smooth. And I think more than anything, Discord is something where you all should be, because all the technical resources, all the primary and secondary help will be readily available to you whenever you want it. So you don't have to worry about it by going and searching on other platforms. So what you would do, I would suggest, is to just go to Discord, check it out, and raise your questions. Drop in comments whenever you feel that something challenging is coming up and you need help with the same. That's about it from my side. I wish you all the best. And once again, welcome on board, Radha. Dhruv, please carry on.
All right. So let's begin. Okay, so today we will be diving into Substrate. Substrate framework lets you develop customizable and upgradable blockchains that are ready to become parachains on the Polkadot network. Now, today's workshop will give you a head start on Substrate development. Now, we'll learn how to set up a development environment for building blockchains with Substrate. And by the end of this workshop, you will be able to customize your own blockchains with Substrate frame palettes. Now, how interesting is that? Now, if you have been attending our workshops regularly, you already know who is joining us today. We have Radhakrishna Dasari with us today, who is a technical educator at the Web3 Foundation, which nurtures technologies and applications in the field of decentralized web software protocols. Radha has conducted multiple workshops with us where we start from the basics, and I highly recommend if you guys haven't been able to be a part of it, you can watch it on YouTube. We really start from scratch there, and this is where we have arrived today after so many workshops with Radha, and it's a good journey all in all. Now, Radhakrishna is very excited to put his skills to use for educating professionals and the general public about the vision of Web3 and the technology stack. So let's dive right in, and over to you now, Radhakrishna. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So,
Dhruv, is it? Yeah.
yes, Dhruv, nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to meet you again. Okay, so I shared the link to the slides as well as the Substrate playground, which we usually use, for workshops like this. So let me share my screen and then get started. Okay. So I'm gonna have a Substrate playground session open just in case if I run through issues on my laptop, so I have one more session running for the workshop session today. Anyway, so this is what I have for today. And let me give you like what this workshop is about and what it is not about. So the first thing is, I don't know how much blockchain building experience all of you have. So if you do have it, then probably I'm assuming you would have developed something, at a level of creating like smart contracts, or maybe some of you are like core blockchain developers. So there's like a wide range of skill set out there. And I also am not making any assumptions about your Rust proficiency. So because Substrate, Polkadot, and everything to do with it, most of it is written in like Rust. So there are two different things here, which is like Substrate, it's a blockchain building framework that is written in Rust, and it has a lot other components to it as well. So that's a lot, but let's see, the entry point into like building blockchains, right? So that is what we're going to explore today. So we'll see how to set up a Substrate development environment on your computer, depending on like which operating system you use. It's either very easy or a little bit tedious. And then we'll see a live blockchain running on the computer. Okay, so it's basically a single node based blockchain. Basically, when you think of blockchain network, it's like a decentralized network with multiple nodes running. But again, like you can run the same, logic on like a single node on your computer. So we'll be doing that. We'll see like a blockchain in action where, so it keeps creating blocks, adding blocks to the, previous block. There is some logic in there as well. So that you can, your satisfaction just to see that a blockchain is running on the network is running on different nodes. But the key thing that we'll explore is we're going to see how to use existing libraries in Substrate, which we call like palettes. They have some logic in them. For instance, you can import a palette which does like accounts and balances. So let's say your blockchain needs a token, and accounts to hold those tokens, ability to transfer those tokens between the accounts. All of that functionality is available in that library, what we call like a palette. So you can just import that palette, put it in your blockchain, and you have like accounts ready right from the beginning. And not only that, like there are plenty of other palettes out there. So we'll see how to include them in the blockchain. So I covered this briefly in my previous workshop session with IBC, but today we'll be going in depth. We'll be looking at like all the different things that we're doing when we include that palette. And finally, if we have time, we'll look into writing our own palette, meaning our own logic. So let's say all of you have some hackathon use case today, and you want to see how to implement that use case on Substrate, then that portion of the workshop will be useful for you. And that particular section would require some Rust proficiency. So basically, if you don't have like Rust background, the link that I've given, I mean, in the presentation, so that's going to have all the, required Rust basics for that. So with that overview, I'm going to go ahead and then start with like what Substrate is. So Substrate is a modular, flexible, and extensible framework. A missing term there is like open source. So everything related to Substrate is open source. Basically, the developers of Substrate are Parity Technologies. So they've been there in blockchain development space for ages. Like they've done clients for Bitcoin. Their client for Ethereum is like, is widely used right now. And then they switched to like Polkadot, development of Polkadot. So when they were building Polkadot, they felt a lot of work that they do is, useful for community in general. Like a lot of the code that they're writing can be reused, by many other people. So what they thought was, let's open this up. Let's make this open source. Let's make a blockchain building framework that other people can use as well. So yeah, we can keep the session. It's 2 hours, so we can keep this like an interactive session. So feel free to stop when you have like a question. Anyway, so to get started with, so basically what this is saying is the Substrate framework itself, it's very modular. So we'll go over the code in a bit. So you'll see that everything is arranged in modules. Those modules are flexible. So you are able to change the parameters in those modules, and then they're also extensible. Okay, so you can add more code to it, or you can add your own modules to Substrate. So it's that flexible. And basically, whatever code has been pushed to the Substrate repository, all of those are like battle tested in like real scenario. So without further ado, let's look at developing on Substrate. So the link that we would navigate to is this one. So we're going to Substrate docs, and then we're going to see like how to set up the development environment. So let's do that. And here I am. So let me zoom this one a little bit. Yeah, so just in case like you're a developer and then you have some questions with Substrate development, we have a dedicated website for your questions. So that is what this pop-up is all about. So let me quickly click on that and see. So yeah, I've been participating in that there. But again, like we have plenty of Substrate-based developer questions. It's like a very active group. So there are over like 2,000 users in there, and then we have 2,000 questions out there. Okay, with 2,300 answers or whatever. But the point being, like you have this resource, I would highly encourage you to like make use of it. And let's go to the. Okay, I'm going to go back to the docs. Perfect. I'll close this prompt right there. Okay, so what this section is saying is to get the sense of like Substrate, what it is about. We have what is called a template node. Okay, so this template node is an out-of-the-box solution that lets you like build like a blockchain right away. So let's see how we sort of do it. And so these instructions, they work very well with like Linux-based machines or a Mac. But if you have like a Windows machine, so I would say, so in this install tab right there, so you have like different operating systems. So depending on your operating system, you sort of have to set things up. for now, what I'm going to do is I will go back to the quick start. And then, so if you're someone who is very command prompt like savvy, so you can use this. I'm not. So what I'm going to do is I'll search for the Substrate template node, so which I have right here in the slide. So I'm going to go there and then going to sort of, open that with my GitHub desktop. So yeah, so basically whatever you're going to do on command prompt, it's just giving like a user interface for doing exactly the same. So I'm basically cloning that repository. Yeah, so depending upon your internet speed, so it gets like cloned and downloaded. So I have it right here. So I use like Visual Studio Code. This has a lot of like Rust-based integrations and even like it has like support for like Substrate. So I would highly recommend using this, but any other editor is fine. So let's open what we just downloaded, which is this one. All right. So now I have the Substrate template node right open. Of code that we have here, but let me go back to my GitHub desktop and then open this sort of the folder in which this is downloaded. I'm going to open that in terminal. Okay. All right. So I'm right now in Substrate node template folder, and then here is where I'll run the commands that are given in the getting started page. So let me go there. All right. So I've done this. This part is done. Instead of using command prompt, I've just used like the GitHub desktop to do it. Yeah. So here you just have instructions on moving to a specific branch. I don't bother to do that. That's fine. So I'm already here. I'm inside that folder. So what I'm gonna do is so Cargo is like kind of like a package manager for Rust. So it's going to take care of like all the dependencies and then ensure like your project is built successfully. So I'm going to copy this, and then here it's basically compiling the Substrate template node code into something that we can execute. So let me do that. Okay, so this is going to take a while. I'll tell you why. It's going to like use a lot of libraries. First of all, it's going to fetch a lot, and then it's going to put all of them together and build that node. So I'll show you briefly like what goes on here. So the exact thing should be happening on your computer as well. If you're using like Playground, the link that I've shared like earlier, so all of this is already done. So you already have like a node downloaded, compiled, and let me go there. So Substrate Playground, okay. So you have everything ready there. So let me terminal. Yeah, so basically this is also the same thing that you're seeing there, like the Substrate template node. So you have that thing open right there, okay? And then you can go to the new terminal and then sort of execute the same command, and then you'll see everything going as expected. So this is going to take some time. So meanwhile, I'm going to go to the code of the Substrate template node, explain a few things, and then come back once this is compiled. All right, so let's see. So these are something that you can sort of ignore. The main thing that I'm going to go like sequentially. So let's talk about the node. So node has all the logic for this blockchain node. So let's see what's in there. So the first thing is chain spec, right? So chain spec is something that specifies like what the chain should have at the beginning. So you can think of this as something that you have to have before you initialize the blockchain. So the beautiful part about like substrate-based blockchains is that you start with the Genesis block with whatever you have in the chain spec, and then you have like blocks being added to it. And with the runtime upgrades, which we're going to see like later on, you can actually update like the parameters that have been uploaded from the chain spec dynamically. So you don't have to modify this file. You can change things like on the fly when the blockchain is sort of running. But anyway, so here you get to see like all the, let me show the interesting part here. Yeah, so you would see that there are few accounts that have already been like initialized. For instance, like we have, if you're familiar with like blockchain space and terminology, there is Alice, Bob, and a bunch of others. So they have like accounts by default on this blockchain, okay? And you have others as well with some sort of like balances like initialized before. So feel free to like take a look at chain spec and then see like how it is being reflected in the actual blockchain. All right, so it's still doing. And then CLI, it's basically the command line instructions that you'd like to give. Yeah. So let's see what we have. Yeah. So if you want your blockchain node to sort of support some kind of RPC calls, this is where you would sort of like make those updates. And yeah, so feel free to explore the node part. So this is, you're just going to leave it as is, as a developer who's looking at the blockchain logic. I don't think you will need to like really change anything in here. What you would be interested in are these two folders. Okay, so one is like palettes. I told you like palettes are these palettes are these like Lego blocks kind of libraries. So if you would like to create like your own palette, like your own logic in there, so here is where you have, so the lib.rs file. So this is where you'll add your code, okay? So this comes with some sort of, get this out. Yeah, some base code that you can get started with. But yeah, so the point being, this is where you would write your custom code if you're trying to write your own palette. And the other thing is runtime. Okay, so runtime is where like the whole blockchain's logic is going to live. So here, if you go to the cargo.toml file, so think of this file as something that you tell to the Rust compiler when you say cargo. It's sort of going to like make sure all of these libraries are sort of imported, and then all the dependencies are sort of met. So in this file, you're going to specify all the dependencies. As you can clearly see, I'm importing like multiple palettes here. So for instance, like balances. So everything to do with like, accounts and balances, it's going to be taken care by this particular palette. Okay, so I'm specifying the version, and then I'm saying, yeah, it's sort of available there. Fetch it from that particular branch or whatever. So that is taken care of. And so we still have this sort of compiling, so I'm just going to let it do its work. But yeah, so the way this goes is that if you want to add like an existing palette from the Substrate repository, if the palette is already existing, then you can simply like add the dependency here, and then enable its features down here, and then that's it. Like you have the palette sort of imported, and then you go to the runtime actual like code where you're like compiling the runtime for the blockchain. So here you're going to add some parameters. Okay, so for for whatever that palette is needing. Okay, so let's say accounts and balances. So what should be the balances type? So is it like an integer with 32 bits, or is it an integer that requires like a lot more bits? So all of that you sort of specify here, and then you can also like specify the values that you need. So for instance, later on we're going to see an example where we give like a nickname to an account on blockchain. So we can specify what is the minimum length for the nickname and what is the maximum length for nickname and everything here. And the interesting thing is, like here in the runtime, you could also like set the block time actually. So let's see where it is. Yeah, so the block time here is saying 6,000 milliseconds. So if you want your blockchain to run like faster, at least for the development aspect, like you can add blocks like faster. You can change it to like 1,000. Okay, and then from now on, like your blockchain creates like a new block every second. So that's the level of like customizability, Substrate framework sort of offers. You have control over like plenty of parameters related to the blockchain. Let's see where we are with this. We're almost done. Okay, we're just waiting for the last couple of modules to compile, and then once that is done, we're all set to start the blockchain.
So an audience member going by the name Tan Guy has a question. Can I follow the Linux quick start using WSL? That is one question that we have.
I think so. So the instructions should be there. Let's see what we have. So WSL, I mean, it's on Windows, right? Or let's see, we have. Is that so? This particular section should sort of answer your question. Let me know if that is what you're looking for. You have the instructions there. Yeah. So if you have Windows, then try to just see. So you have install tab here. So just see like Windows section there. All right. So when you compile for the first time, like this happens. Yeah, it's done. It took like about 11 minutes on my computer. But from now on, like when you sort of develop, you don't need to like compile it from scratch. So it only needs like that particular palette to, you check the code in whichever palette you're running. It checks the dependencies, and then you can sort of run the blockchain. But anyway, so it's done. Let's start the blockchain node and see what happens. All right, so quick start. We are here. So everything compiled there. Now it's the time of starting the node. All right, so let's see what this command is going to do. All right, so help is going to show you like everything that you can do with this particular like blockchain node. Okay, so there's a lot, as you can clearly see. There's plenty of things that that this Substrate template node sort of allows you through like command prompt. So with that, let me sort of run the blockchain and then see things in action. Okay, so the other thing that's here is you can also remember in the chain spec we sort of created Alice and Bob like accounts by default. So if you'd like to see their account details, and the public private key pair are well known to everybody. So if you just want to inspect that, you can run that command to do so, then you'll get it. But I won't waste my time there. I'll just show you like the blockchain in action. which is what all of you have signed up today for, right? So let's do this. There you go. So now I have a substrate node. That's the version, and then it's sort of, so it imported the block 1, and then block 2, block 3, and it's sort of adding these blocks. So basically nothing is happening on the blockchain. It's basically like a ghost chain, but we have like a working like blockchain right here. Now, if you want to interact with your blockchain node, you've created this blockchain node, it's running on your machine. If you want to interact with it, give some commands for it to execute something, or you want to query like what's happening in the blockchain, you would need some kind of like interface, right? So for that, there are plenty of interfaces out there. So we have a standard one, which is Polkadot.js. So in a way, if you think about it, Polkadot, okay, so I'm just going to switch to Polkadot network. So Polkadot is also a substrate-based chain. Okay, so this Polkadot.js UI is able to connect to it through like an endpoint that is exposed by a few people. So you're able to connect to that network through a single node, and then you're able to see like what's happening on Polkadot, right? So you have a bunch of blocks being created. Looks like there are no events that have happened since I've like connected to the network. Let's see like what's happening in Kusama. So Kusama is more eventful than sort of Polkadot. So there's a bunch of events that are happening out there. The interesting thing is, everything that you see, the events, and as a developer, you can, make calls to the blockchain, so that is what this extrinsics is all about. So with extrinsics, you can say, okay, so in balances, I want to transfer, some money from my account to the other account. So this sort of calls, you can make them through query like the chain state. So you can go to, so let's look at what's happening with, I don't know, let's see. Go to nomination pools and then counter for wanted pools. So just some random thing that I'm sort of querying from the chain. So I'm sort of getting this information from the chain. This is like a live blockchain, a production blockchain that is sort of running. And Polkadot.js is one of the user interfaces. It's also open source, written in like TypeScript. So you get to like sort of interact with the blockchain. So with all that talk, I just want to show you that I can also interact with the local node that is running on my machine, which is development. Okay. So by default, the local node is initialized at that particular port. So we all, let's switch to that one. All right, so let's see what's happening with our blockchain node, the single node that's running on my computer. So you could do the same thing on your computer, and then you're going to see this thing in action. Okay, so here I see the 37th block has been created. So let's see in the command prompt. So they always sort of match. Okay, so 38th block. So the hash, it's going to be the same right there. So instead of keeping this like a ghost blockchain without any events, let's try to do something on this blockchain and then see whether those events are being captured here. Okay, so let's go to the developer tab and then extrinsics. So I'm going to go to like Bob's account. Let's see the balance. Okay, so I have so many units. So this was all given to Bob in the chain spec. Okay, so all of these accounts you see. So from Alice to, so I'm going to transfer, destination ID, okay, to Ferdy, some virtual tokens. Okay, so whatever I have there, I'm sorry, I'm just shifting like my own face. This Zoom is like everywhere. All right, so I'm going to submit this transaction. So because like this is like a development node, you're basically the pseudo user. So you're the ultimate authority right now. Definitely this blockchain node is not decentralized. Later on, like if you try to create a blockchain and then sort of decentralize it, then you shouldn't be having the authority to transfer account balance from one account to the other account. That's something Alice should be doing. But for now, I'm submitting this transaction on behalf of Alice. Okay, so it looks like so-and-so transactions have been executed, and the transaction has been entered into the block. So let's go to the network and then explore. Okay, so clearly the events. So these are the events that were initiated by me, and then I have from Alice to Ferdy, so-and-so balance has been like transferred, and then Ferdy had this particular balance being deposited in his account. Are the transactions being signed here? Yeah. So as you could see initially, what we have. So we inspected the key of Alice, right? Or Bob, you can inspect that. So all of this is sort of available to us. So the secret seed. So we basically sign that with the available seed, and then the transaction got executed. But on the other hand, like let's say the direct answer for your question is that the transaction has been signed. The same thing, like if you try to do on sort of Polkadot, then you would like literally sort of sign it on your own, right, with your private key. All right. So in any case, so that sort of gave you a brief, introduction to sort of setting up the node on your computer, running it, and then interacting with it, and trying to see like what are the features that are available. So if you want to explore like the features that are already coming with the Substrate template node, let me show that for you, like where you would see. So in extrinsics, so you have all these drop down things right here, right? So balances, so that palette is available for you to interact with. So grandpa is like the consensus, right? So for a single node, you wouldn't need any consensus, but for if you're using like multiple nodes and then they're sort of building the blockchain, you would need, and all of those are sort of decentralized, you would need like a consensus engine, a finality gadget. So grandpa is that. So we're not going to use anything with that. So right now, like we have the pseudo permission to do anything on the chain. So hence we have like a pseudo palette. So there is system palette. So there are a bunch of things that you can go and do with the system. An interesting thing on like Substrate based chains is in the block you can add a remark. So remark is like a metadata that you want to. Okay, so let me just write something. I'll write Web3 in here, and then so remarks are something that you can add to the blocks, and they are forever there in the blockchain. So let's do this. Submit. All right. So if I go to the network, where do we have? It should be included in, I don't know, like in one of those. I don't know which block it got included. But yeah, so whatever remark we sort of issued, so it sort of got included in the blockchain. So I can actually do that again, and then remark. Okay, so it says included in the block. Let's see in here. So if you have like a block explorer, so you'd be able to like explore it better, but I won't sort of waste my time here. So let's move to the next part of the presentation, which is adding a palette into the blockchain. So we have like this blockchain node running. So I want to add like an additional palette here. Okay, so again, like template module is what we saw in the palettes folder earlier. This is where you can add custom code, and that sort of shows up here. So right now you have two default calls here, like cause error, do something. So instead of do something, you would be like, okay, so if you're working on some kind of like implementation where you're adding, let's say, real estate based like application. Okay, so you want to add like some contract there, or if you want to do something with respect to the hackathon application you're planning to build. So those show up here. So this is how you interact with the blockchain. And then you have the option to write these calls. These calls go to the blockchain network, and then they get sort of executed with the parameters that you sort of set. All right, so I'm going to stop this, and then I will also, let it be this one. All right, so I'll also, okay, so this is my, I'm going to press like Control C, and I've ended the, so I sort of ended the blockchain right now. If I say cargo clean, so basically whatever blocks that have been there added in the data folder, so they're sort of clean now. So let me go back to the presentation. So we're here. This is something for you to like explore. So this is going to take some time, but this is not the goal of today's workshop. So I'll let you like explore this like later on. So after the presentation, after the workshop, so if you have like Substrate setup, you could actually clean everything and then sort of run two different nodes. And how do you do that? On the same computer, you create like two different terminals. In the one of the terminal, you're going to execute this. So basically, in the chain spec, we sort of define Alice and Bob to have like permissions to create blocks. So basically, I'm starting a validator. So a validator who creates and validates and creates the blocks. The name would be like Radha, or you can give it any sort of your name. So both of these nodes are going to run in tandem, and then both of them are going to sort of add one block at a time to the blockchain. Workshop. So the next interesting thing about like Substrate is, like I mentioned, Frame. So Frame is set of libraries which are application oriented. So runtime for a blockchain is like its brains. So whatever logic you have in the blockchain, in a Substrate-based blockchain, it is all sort of created in the runtime. So Frame is a set of like these modules that sort of allow you to enhance your runtime. Okay, so when building with Frame, the Substrate runtime is composed of several smaller components called palettes. So there is a way to import these palettes and make them work like plug and play libraries. So just a visualization of how you can see these palettes. So you can pick and choose like what palette you want in your blockchain, and then sort of create a customized blockchain with whatever is existing. You want like staking feature to be available in your blockchain, then there's a staking palette. And of course, like you may not like the default settings of that particular staking palette, but Substrate sort of gives you flexibility to update those parameters, update the functions, the calls, the events, or everything that the palette has. You have the option to sort of customize and change them. But again, like to be able to do that, you would need Rust knowledge. So you should know how to write code in Rust, and also understand like how that code has to be organized in like Substrate. So there's a bit of like learning curve there. But if you're a full-time blockchain developer who's working on Substrate, trying to build like blockchains out of it. That's something that gives you a lot of what do you say? So that sort of effort you put in learning this, it's gonna pay off once you cross that learning curve. Then you have like a lot of power in your hands to write like your own palettes. For instance, like there are parachain projects that are out there who took the Substrate code, and then they've developed a lot of palettes for their individual parachains, like EVM compatibility, something like this. So every parachain that's offering EVM compatibility has built like their own version of it. So just showing you like how flexible that is. Yeah, so in a way, like Substrate template node, which we saw running successfully, it lets you easily add and remove palettes as well. So this is the next part of today's workshop. And then finally, we can create like our own modules to customize the chain functionality. That's the last part of workshop. So we'll do this. We'll take like a short break because I need some break too. At that time, we'll do some Q&A, questions and answers, and then we'll jump into creating like our own, our own palette with the custom logic that we want in it. So I demonstrated this like shortly in my previous workshop, but today we're going to go in depth as to like what we're doing with this palette. So here I have the link, so you can click on that. It takes you right here. So here I'm gonna see what's this. Yeah. So here you'll see plenty of background info that you would need to understand like what we are doing. I'll let you sort of go through this at your own pace like later on in this workshop. I'm only going to focus on the aspects that are important for today's session. So for instance, just to show you like what we are trying to do here, you see earlier you saw like Alice, Bob, Ferdy, and other names in the blockchain, right? So this particular palette is going to allow us to give those accounts some nickname. Okay, so I can actually rename Alice to Radha on the blockchain itself. So that's what we're going to do. So we can set the name, we can clear that name, again, remove my name from the blockchain and then let it be like Alice. And also like kill name. And this I think is functionality for the pseudo user. Like, so right now on Polkadot, like the pseudo user is like the root origin, and the root origin is controlled by the governance. So let's say someone or something went wrong and you want to forcibly make some changes to the blockchain, that kind of privileged account can actually kill a particular name. So especially if somebody is misusing a particular name on Polkadot, then something of this exists to sort of kill it. Anyways, so before you begin, so what your development environment, you already built a local blockchain, which I already showed you, like how it is done, and then a bunch of like prereqs, which I think all of you check off right here. Okay, so you have experience with some developing some software and then some familiarity with blockchain knowledge. So let's dive in. So I already mentioned the tutorial objectives. We're going to include this palette into our blockchain and then see it working live. All right, so so the first things first, like I mentioned to you that there is this cargo.toml file, which sort of takes care of all the dependencies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include palette nix. Okay, so let's see palette nix where it is. Okay, Substrate palette nix. All right, there you go. So in Substrate repo, okay, so this is the Substrate GitHub repo. You have like frame, and then you have a bunch of palettes here, right? So all of these are publicly available for you. You can pick like any of these palettes and then sort of include them in your blockchain. What we are interested in right now is the Nix palette. Okay, so this Nix palette, it has all the code that is required for the functionality I just mentioned. So if you look at the source code, the lib.rs file, yeah. So in this, like the whole palette has been defined. This has been written by one of the developers at Parity, I guess. And then, yeah, so here you have like everything written. So basically, what we're going to do is leverage this code by just including that dependency. What happens is the cargo manager, it's going to like get all this code, import it, enable its features for that to be used in the runtime. So where we are right here. Yep. So I'm going to copy this, okay, palette Nix. And then I'll go back to the Substrate template. In the runtime folder, okay, so I have the cargo toml file. So right below balances. Okay, there you go. So palette balances, palette Nix. It doesn't matter like where you put it. I just want, so that's my favorite spot to put like palette Nix line code. Yeah, feel free to put it like anywhere, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so I have this. So just to ensure it's picking up like the same version. And then, yeah, just to ensure, things work like smoothly, I'm just going to use that, okay? Use that tag just to ensure like if people have made changes from one to the other, you would want it to like work when you import it. So I'm doing that, but this might be a curse. I don't know. So I've worked with 0.028 actually. So I'm now checking with like 2.4 today. So let's see what goes on. All right. So I included that code, and the next thing that it's asking me is to enable the features of that particular palette, and the standard features, so you can enable them just by including this particular line. Okay, so you go to application. Okay, so default features std, and then here, right below this one, I'm just trying to. Perfect. Done. So right now we have, everything that's needed in this particular file. The dependencies, it's taken care of. Now let's see if we successfully, if whatever code I've added as a dependency is compiling properly. All of those together are working properly. So this sort of checks it. I'm just going to do that and then go here. I'll just make sure that I save this. All right, so I've saved this file, and in the command prompt, like I'm in the same Substrate template node. So I'm just going to check this. So clearly, like previously, it sort of compiled a lot of libraries together. Right now, it's only limiting it to whatever this palette is sort of using and ensuring that it's going to work. Yeah, so once again, showing you like things are modular here. So we're just checking whether this module is going to work properly. So while this one compiles, let's see what's coming like next and be ready for that one. Yeah, so this section of the document just shows you a comparison. Okay, so balances is something that any developer out there would be able to understand, right? So balances palette has the capability to track the balances of an account, allow you to like transfer tokens between or balance between accounts, and all the associated, data types with it. So it's asking you to check like how things are implemented in balances palette, and then compare it with like how they're shown in like Nix palette. So this is that one. Yeah, clearly the config trait. So in Rust is something like you just give like a trailer for the developer, like, okay, these are the things that need to be there in your code when you sort of implement them. So there needs to be like currency, so when someone has to create like a nickname, they should put some balance as a deposit. Else, like, people are just going to spam the network with nicknames. So we need some sort of collateral, some kind of deposit, so that they're able to use the on-chain resources to display their nickname. So we need that. There's a reservation fee, so there's like minimum length for the nickname and then maximum length. So these are all sort of defined there. And then, yeah, for instance, in the implementation of those, so you clearly see that you're adding, maximum number of locks in balances, like 50 on a certain account. So existential deposit, the amount of money that you need for the account to exist on chain is like 500, and you can see that it's like a unsigned 128-bit integer. So you have the customizability here. So you can define this value to whatever you want while you implement that particular trait. All right. So anyway, so that's just giving you like a background of what's happening behind the scenes. If you see like what we have to do, so we already have in here like everything defined. Okay, so here all the traits are defined. We imported this code already. Now we want to implement like whatever is required in the runtime of the blockchain. So let's do that. Okay, so in runtime folder, go to the source folder and go to the lib.rs file. So this is the core runtime file in which like we have to make changes to the code. So let me go there. So runtime src source code, and then in here you have the lib.rs file. All right. So briefly, I showed you this already before. I'm just going to change this to 1000. Okay, so just to show you a blockchain that is running like really fast, 1000 milliseconds, like 1 second, it sort of adds a block. I made the change, and then from here, so you see that every palette, so it's required that you implement, whatever traits that are defined in that original palette. So let me go to the balances. Okay, so here I'm going to implement everything that Nix palette needs you to implement. Okay, so let me copy that code. It's here, and then copying this, and then bring it right there. Okay, so this is done. So whatever is expected is being taken care of here. So just if I want to make it like costly for anybody to create a nickname on the chain, I'm going to modify things here. Okay, so I'm going to add like more values there. If I'm okay with like 5 characters for a nickname, so I'm just going to change it right there. If I just want to restrict, the number of characters in the nickname to, let's say, like 15, so I can do it right there. Okay, so that is fine. So I've basically, like, all of these are required by the Nix palette to work, and then I'm sort of giving it the required parameters or sort of like values. Good. Now this is not just enough. Now I sort of did the customization, and then somewhere there is like a construct runtime macro. So macros, if you're familiar with like macros in general, they write code for you. They make your life easy by writing a lot of redundant code. So construct runtime is a macro that's there in like Substrate, which puts like all these modules or palettes together and make them like work together. Okay, so I have this, and then here I would like to sort of add palette next, and then whatever name you include here, so that is the one that's going to be showed in the front end. Like when you click the drop down and then you saw a bunch of palettes, right? Like in the Polka.js UI. So you'll be seeing like Nix palette shown there as well. Let me do that. I'm going to put it right here. Perfect. So I'm going to save it. And let's go back. Yeah, now that's how easy it is for you to include a palette into a blockchain's runtime. Now I'm just going to pray that whatever configuration that I have here sort of compiles, and then I'll be able to like show you live that this thing actually works. Let's do that. Where am I? Yeah. So let's see this thing.
All right, so let's try to recap what we just finished. So we went to the runtime folder, and then in the cargo terminal file, we included this dependency for palette.nix. So palette.nix is now going to be imported, and we're going to enable the standard features of palette.nix, right there. And we're done with the cargo terminal file. So the next step is to go to the lib.rs file. Okay, so this is where we included this code snippet, right? So here you have an option to choose the minimum length of your nickname, maximum length of your nickname, and so on and so forth. And also just to show you that we can configure many other parameters as well. So I've changed the block time to 1 second instead of 6 seconds. So you'll see that in action when we run this demo. And finally, what we did was we have to construct the runtime, and in here I added that line of code, right? So I'm saying there is this Nix palette that needs to be added to the runtime, and this is all you had to do. And then we checked if this is going to be compiled. Now let's just try to run this blockchain, right? So let me copy that line of code and then run the blockchain. And then here you can see that the blockchain is actually building blocks each second. Let's navigate to Polka.js, for better user interface. I'm going to switch the node to, my development environment. So I'm going to connect to the local node that I'm running on the machine. Yeah, so here you can see the blocks are being added, like, each second. So now what I'm going to do is I'll go to the developer tab and extrinsics. So in here, along with all the palettes, you should be able to see Nix as well. Okay, so there are, let me choose an account with some balance in it. And yeah, so here are the calls that I can make to the Nix palette. Okay, so I'm going to try to set the name for Bob with Web3, but clearly this transaction wouldn't go through because the number of characters there are just 4. Remember, the minimum length of the nickname is 5 characters. So I'm just going to add the whole name there, Web3 Foundation, and this transaction will go through. There you go. And then you have so you see that everywhere Bob was shown in the UI. Now you'll see like Web3 Foundation. All right, so you can clear the name. So let me clear the name right there and then submit the transaction. Yeah, so now Bob account is just Bob. So I'll let you like play around with all the calls that you can make to this particular palette, see how things work. And now we're going to see the next part.
Okay, so talking about like the features of Substrate itself, and mentioning this earlier, like how much technical freedom you have as a developer. So you get started with the Substrate template node, and you play around with this just the way we're doing right now, and just the way like I've did like earlier in my days here. And then you sort of check like Substrate frame. So the GitHub repo we looked at, like in Substrate, like you have the frame folder. So in here, like you have a lot of palettes. So for instance, the assets palette. So assets palette gives you the ability to like mint NFTs, or mint like assets like ERC20 tokens in like Ethereum. So if you're trying to have like similar things on Substrate based chains like Polkadot, so assets palette is the one that you would sort of use for it, and then it has all the code that is required for doing it. And if you want to like make some changes in the assets palette, you can fork it, like you can make your own palette out of it and then deploy on your blockchain. So that is done. And yeah, so what I'm trying to highlight here is that you as a developer can, the development ease, like it's moderate, like being able to play around with those palettes and then do it. And then the Substrate core part of it, like, the core components of Substrate, even they are available to be tweaked, right from like the encryption schemes, hashing algorithms that you use in your blockchain. And like, if you're not happy with the consensus engine, the default one that's given with this blockchain, you have the ability to sort of modify all of them as well. And that's the level of technical freedom you get as a developer. So talking about like the palette. So we've talked a lot about like palettes in general. Let's see like what it takes to write your own palette, right? So the basic structure of a palette looks like this. And I know, like, if you're not familiar with like Rust or like how things are organized in Substrate, this looks like a foreign language. So to just give you an overview of the skeleton of a palette, here are the key things. So the first thing is you have like a placeholder for defining all the traits and types. So you, for instance, in the next palette, like we had different types, right? Like the account balance, the reservation fee, all of these have a certain type. And there are a bunch of calls that you would want to see implemented. So all of those are defined in here. So you define like what the storage should be. So the runtime storage is like a very scarce resource. So you want to use like efficient data structures here. So everything to do with runtime events. So the events that needs to be, so earlier when we saw when I sent balance from one account to the other, you saw that event on the Polkadot.js UI, right? So for events to be captured by a listener, so you define them here. And then hooks. So hooks contain like the code that needs to be executed if something happens on the chain. So you can define all of them here. And then finally, the extrinsics. So earlier in the dropdown of template module, you saw do something, or do nothing, or whatever calls that you have. So you have the ability to have all of them written in the extrinsics part here. So in the palette, you're going to write all of those, including set the length of something, or create like a kitty, which is what the tutorial is about. So basically, in this tutorial, like you're going to have like a clear walkthrough of Substrate kitties. Like this is a very popular tutorial, even in like Ethereum blockchain. Like if you heard of like the kitties, like crypto kitties, so they were like a big thing initially. So almost every blockchain project out there sort of uses this as an example for writing a dApp. So basically, you're writing a distributed app that lets you mint these kitties, crypto kitties, and then you sort of you can breed like two kitties, and then there's like a DNA signature that sort of modifies it a little bit. and then the UI is going to render that into this. So the color of the kitty, or the eyes, ears, all of them, using the DNA signature, you can render them as you need. But anyways, the UI thing is not part of like the tutorial. Everything to do with like the backend, like having like an owner for the kitty, each kitty having like some parameters. So all of that you get familiar using like this particular workshop. Let's see briefly. So I have this link as well. I would say if you're looking to be like a developer in Substrate, or if you're trying to build some kind of application for the hackathon, I would say so this is a starting point for you to check the waters, like what exactly is expected if we have to write a dApp on like Substrate. So let's briefly see like what this workshop is about, and then I'm going to so this also has like solution. So what I'm going to do is copy that solution and then execute it and show you like that it works, so that you'll be able to like progressively learn about it and have like a successful dApp running on your machine. Anyway, so it's giving you introduction to like what Palette is, and then what Substrate is all about. You've heard that from me already. And then you have Frame, like you have a deeper write up here about like what Frame is, what those palettes are, and how they interact with the node. And then so here you see the basic Rust knowledge that you would need. So for instance, like you have the enumerations, enums like this one. So direction, what do you want a direction to have? Like there's up, down, left, and right. So you'll see most of this appearing in like Substrate or Polkadot code, because a few things related to the blockchain, you can enumerate all of them right there. And then there are also like structures. Okay, so the structs have like fields, and then the type of that particular field. So this is all like Rust and all the Rust knowledge that you would need to finish this particular tutorial. And then like the traits. Okay, so traits are like so if you go to like the Rust textbook and then look for trait definition, so these are like the method signatures. Like you define like what that method should take as input and what kind of like output it sort of gives. And then you have a chance to sort of implement it. So for instance here, trait opposite. Okay, so opposite takes itself and then it gives itself as the output. So opposite, you implement it. Okay, so you're implementing it, and then you have this code to implement that. So these are a few things that you would learn when you learn like Rust. You'll write simple programs like these. You're going to see this in action. And all of these concepts you bring to like Substrate. And then you have like one file that sort of lets you define all these traits, and then one file where you sort of implement all those. So yeah. And then clearly, like, from Rust traits, you're going to like Substrate, and then it shows you how this thing matches with what's happening in Rust. Yeah, so and then you have like a discussion about like Rust generics, and then this tutorial also talks about like Rust macros and then how they correspond to like Substrate macros. So macro is code that writes code, right? So any sort of macro is like a condensed version of like a lengthy code. So everything that starts with hash, so it's like a macro in Substrate. So it's going to add like all the boilerplate code that is required for this particular palette to work. So another important concept about Substrate is that there are weights for every single call, every single execution you make on blockchain. It's actually nodes that run on computers like this one, right? So my machine is running a blockchain node. Before it creates like the block, it should be able to execute the transaction that was in the mempool. So for that to be able to happen, within a single block time, each transaction, let's say balance transfer. So balance transfer is pretty simple. So that is associated with a certain weight. So substrate, so weights are like an important component. So you can get these weights for your calls by running like standard benchmarks. So you run these benchmarks and then you get the weights that are required for each call. It talks about like storage, okay, runtime storage, the kind of data structures you use, and yeah. So that with that backdrop, I expect, if with no Rust knowledge, if you're trying to get started with this, so the earlier part is going to take a week, especially if you're like a working professional who's doing this as something like a side, thing. It would take a week for you to be comfortable with whatever has been discussed so far, and then you can get started with the Substrate Kitties tutorial. So here you have the instructions with the Rust knowledge and Substrate knowledge. You try to like do the changes in here. If you want to check whether whatever you've done is correct or not, you have the solution right there. Okay, so whatever is instructions you have here, you have the action items with the base code. So you should be able to like add the code, and then if you just want to be confident that you have written whatever you've written is correct, you have you can actually check the solution right here. And you have like multiple sections here that you could sort of explore, right? So you have creating, customizing the storage. So creating kitty, what does it mean to create like a kitty in like runtime? Okay, so you have, yeah. So basically, you each kitty can have only a single owner. So you can define like errors there, saying too many owned, or there's a duplicate kitty, or there's some overflow. So all of this you sort of gain that understanding by going through this tutorial sequentially. So you can actually set a price for it. You can give you can write like code to ensure like the kitty is bought or exchanged between like users, and yeah. So once you add all that code, let's see like where exactly we're going to add the palette to the code. So let's go here, previous. Okay, so this one. So this solution right there, this is something that I'm going to add to the code like right now. It has like everything that is needed. So basically, the template module, whatever template I have, I'm going to copy this entire code in there, and this will let me mint kitties, buy them, and do a lot of stuff with them. So this is where you'll arrive after successfully finishing this particular tutorial.
All right, so let me show you a working demo of Substrate Kitties. So navigate to the Buy Kitty page, go to the solution, and then copy the entire solution. Okay, so and then sort of paste it within the palettes template. So lib.rs file, replace the entire code with the Substrate Kitties solution. There you go. And then just to ensure that it's compiling very well, so let's just try to build this particular palette. And if that goes like successfully, okay, so all you have to do, the next part is, you included the palette code. Now it's important that you modify the runtime file as well. So remember what we did in the next palette. So we're going to repeat the same thing for the Substrate Kitties palette as well. There you go. So right now the palette template is not implementing much. So you're expected to implement all of these types in that particular runtime folder. So let me navigate back, replace this code with what we have there. Okay, so now you have maximum number of kitties owned is 100. Okay, so that's where you set that. Perfect. And then we have to also construct the runtime. In here, let's add the palette template with its particular name, like Substrate kitties. So let's just replace template module with the more descriptive name for this particular palette, which is Substrate kitties. So now in Polka.js, when I try to make a call to this particular palette, I'll see Substrate kitties listed in the dropdown. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is, so we're just going to compile the whole thing. So let me do that right there. It's going to take a while. And once it is like successfully compiled, the next step is to start the blockchain, right? So let's start the blockchain here. And yeah, there you go. So I left these settings the same. So each second a new block is being added. So let's navigate to the developer tab to extrinsics. Here you see like Substrate kitties listed now. Perfect. So let me select Substrate kitties, and then I'm going to create a kitty. Okay, so create a kitty through the Bob's account, sign and submit. Yeah, so my transaction was success. So if you want to query the chain state to see, like, the details of the kitty we just created, you could do that. So let's see, not that one. So let's go to the kitty zone by Bob, right? So we just minted a kitty with Bob. There you go. So I have that particular hash for the kitty that I just minted. All right, so let's see what else we can do here. So Substrate kitties. All right, so there is an option to set price for the kitty. Okay, so we're going to do that. For being able to do that, we need the ID of the kitty. I forgot to copy it before, so let me go back to chain state again and then sort of query the kitty ID. All right, so there, and then kitties owned by Bob. There you go. So I'm going to copy this hash and then go back to extrinsics tab, Substrate kitties, and then yeah, I'm going to set price for this. So I'm just entering some, random value here. I'll just make sure that I enter more value when I'm trying to buy this kitty. Okay, so let me finish this transaction first. Perfect. Now let me, so here is where you can see all the events that have happened so far. So we created a kitty, we set the price. Now I'm going to buy this kitty. Okay, so from Bob, so let's do that. So Substrate kitties, buy kitty. So let's see what happens if we just try to buy this kitty. Using Bob account. Let me give it some price and then submit the transaction. So clearly you're transferring the kitty, so yes, transfer to self. Clearly that's an error. So let's try to use a different account to buy the kitty from Bob. Okay, so I just bought it from Alice account. Let me go to the network activity. Yeah, so clearly the Substrate kitty has been transferred from Bob to Alice there, right? So feel free to explore as much as you can with this tutorial.
If there are no questions, we can conclude the workshop. But basically, this is how things are done in Substrate. Get a hang of it. Try to change the parameters, add palettes, see them working, and then start writing your own palettes.
No, I think thanks, Radha.
Looks like there are no more questions here.
Yeah, so I think little in-depth technical, in my opinion. So I think people will take some time to kind of get to understand that. I am not sure about the level of Rust and Substrate knowledge people. So I'm not sure if there are many questions will come. But then I think one thing what really I found very interesting is that it is not that complex as it looks like from outside. Rather, I'm definitely, at least what is my understanding. Once you start doing things in a systematic way, it will not take you to go maybe for years for you to learn there. I was watching one video from Gav, I guess maybe in one of the workshops he was doing, where he said that he got a laptop from Mac machine from the showroom, and then he opened his laptop and he created palette, substrate palette. I don't know which year was that, but then
I think it was one of the Web3 summits. Yeah, 2018, 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was so interesting, and I think you also are showing. I mean, in a similar way, whether it is possible to do that. But yeah, I mean, of course, people have to do things in the right way, and my objective was for people to get a sense and feel that it is quite doable. And I wanted people to feel that. I mean, that's where I was requesting you to kind of help us with this, and I think this really has made sense to me. At least I cannot talk on behalf of the community, but
Right.
then yeah. But I can commit to you that we will definitely work more on this, and take it to add a lot more developers in the community. I mean, that's what is our goal.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll do my best, like create like a tutorial without like any breaks, and I think that should.
I think I like your sincerity.
No. I mean, this was unexpected. Like I had no clue. Like I just got lost when it wasn't working as expected, and obviously like you lose your flow. So yeah, I should just start doing on my computer more than just like the playground. Yeah.
So thanks so much. Yes, Boo.
All right. So I'll talk to you again, and then yeah. So we'll keep in touch.
Sure. I think Dhruv, you are on mute. We can't talk. We can't hear you.
Sorry, yes. So thank you so much for the in-depth session. So it was very hands-on. I must say it was the workshop lasted. We usually do shorter workshop. This was the longer one. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Radha, for joining. And this is making sharing knowledge. It's so much fun and exciting here. So before we sign off for today, we have lined up 4 hackathons leading to the main one at our conference in January. So which is a great platform for you guys to implement what you have learned in the workshops, the ones that have been happening before this and the workshop today. So it's a great platform to implement the learnings. So the link for the same will be in the chat box. I've already put it up. I'm going to send it again. And you can register for the hackathons and the workshops. So do follow us on social media to stay updated. And thank you so much. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Radha. Thank you so much. Talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.